Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. This is episode 33 on 4/22/22. So that's kind of fun. We had some setbacks, so we couldn't do the podcast on Wednesday. So, Kellie, would you like to tell us about those?
Giant fire, big fire. I had gone out earlier the day, Wednesday, about 11 o'clock in the morning because I had my house open and I kept smelling smoke.
Mhm.
And I had burnt trash paper earlier and I thought, now I know I put that fire out because it's in a big contained metal, bin. So with a lid on it. So there's no way it could have been that. But I went out and checked anyway, and there was just wall of black smoke
Mhm.
as far as I could see. I went, oh, it's not my bin. So I just started calling neighbors because it was close
Mhm.
and I couldn't really see from the smoke how close it was.
Mhm.
And in 3 calls, I figured out, it was about a mile at that point away. So the wind initially was going towards the north, would have missed me completely, but it shifted and it shifted to the east. And I was due east of that fire. So there were 7 fire trucks. Most of our fire department out here um, is volunteer.
Mhm.
There were people on backhoes and road graders and all kinds of heavy equipment knocking down dead trees and making roads wider for fire breaks. It was incredible how quickly people congealed around the area. But when the wind shifted to the east, they were going to the north and it kind of got behind them.
Mhm.
And then they were coming house to house saying, get ready to evacuate. And I've lived here almost 20 years. And I know I've been through fires out here before. Um, I know what defensible space is.
Mhm.
So I've made sure that I don't have anything combustible within 20 feet of my house.
Mhm.
So when the sheriff came to tell me to evacuate, I told him no, I wasn't going.
Mhm.
And he said, well, we expect this whole area to go up. And
Mhm.
I said, I have faith. I'm not going through another fire. I lost everything in a fire once. It was devastating, very long time to recover. I'm not doing that again. I had complete faith that the universe was not going to put me through that again. Now I might do something else, but that I've done. And he said, well, I can't force you to go.
Mhm.
Good, good. And people started bringing their animals because word gets out very quickly. There's this crazy person over here who says she's not going, and animals started appearing, and it was just it was it got a little hairy there for a while. And I put out the call because the fire was coming closer, that we needed prayer warriors, we needed people to shift the winds, make it go back like it was to begin with, back towards the north. And right around sunset, that is exactly what happened. It went to the north. And that same sheriff came back and he goes, I don't know how you guys did that. Good job. And I'm like, why, thank you. But it was certainly not me. There were a number of my neighbors here, and we were all um, periodically we would run outside and go, trying to blow it away. I had, of course, all of my sprinklers and drip systems, and I have ponds everywhere that are more or less wildlife ponds.
Mhm.
But, I've been talking about connecting them all and then having a moat
Mhm.
around my house. I think that might be a good idea. But yeah, it was really amazing how everything happened, and just incredible sense of community, how everyone was like, how can I help? And of all the people that were told to evacuate, the only person that evacuated was the person in the wheelchair.
Mhm.
Everybody else stayed and were either on heavy equipment or manning a fire hose or something else. So it was incredible. And I have no doubt that prayers and energy sent to shift the winds is what really helped it shift.
You know,
Um,
and it is powerful as that is. I think that it's also like, the point I want to touch on is karma. Like, I know you called me and it's like, do something. And I'm like, well, we can't stop it. If this was meant
right,
to happen, we can't intervene in that because that's really bad karma to stop
right.
something that is supposed to happen. I said, what's going to be the best case scenario?
Yeah,
If we can shift it, like sometimes you can shift storms so they miss major things. We can't stop the storm, but if
right.
there's enough energy, it can push it in a different direction. And I can just see people going, "We can do that, really?" It takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of people who know kind of how to manipulate that to do
Hmm.
that. So I'm not saying go out in the middle of a storm and go,
No,
"Tornado, go this way." That's not gonna work.
no,
But, I think that we sometimes forget how powerful energy is and how
yeah,
powerful prayer is.
yeah,
And that, I mean, I just did have a friend who lost everything in the Colorado fires. So, I think there's also something about fire, about purifying and cleansing. And we have to look at what are the messages around that as well. Well, in
right.
your case, you know why the fire started here.
Idiocy. Yeah, idiocy.
Uh-huh.
People don't think.
Uh-huh.
And what was that comedian? Somebody said you can't fix stupid. That's kind of where I'm at right now. He's, as far as I know, still in jail. Haven't heard anything else, but it was just stupid. It was just, an idiot. And I will never understand it. But, if it's 90 degrees with a 40-mile-per-hour wind gust and it hasn't rained in a month, you probably shouldn't go outside and start a fire. Just a hunch. Not a good idea. Get out of hand and spread everywhere. And in this case, they expected it to be much worse. And we are all incredibly grateful for the volunteer fire people that came out here and for everyone who sent prayers and energy because it was expected to be a lot worse.
Mhm.
So we were very lucky.
And you can throw as much energy and prayers as you want. If something's meant to shift a little bit, it will. Because I don't want people to get discouraged. Well, we tried so hard to do this and it
Right.
didn't happen. We can't change the outcome of things.
No.
Sometimes you can just kind of push it in a little bit different direction if it's okay to do that. And if it wasn't okay to do that, it wouldn't have happened.
There are so many different layers
Hmm.
where when we're talking about karma, that it's really, I think what matters most more than anything else is what is your intent
Hmm.
behind what you're trying to do. Because even if you put out good energy and something bad still happens, you've put that energy out there. So I firmly believe, even if if the wind hadn't shifted, if everybody out here had lost everything, your positive energy would have still helped us rebuild and move forward. I think there is never a time when you shouldn't, contribute positive energy into a situation. Um, the damage comes when, like you said, where you're trying to force it to do something it's not meant to. But still, I know people who have lost everything in hurricanes, and I knew a lady on the Texas Gulf Coast that um, lost everything twice. And the second time, I said, "Why are you rebuilding here?" And she said, I never liked that color floor anyway. And that was how she got through it. And
Hmm.
it wasn't that, yeah, sure, burn my house down and take everything away. I didn't like my floor anyway. But that was her way of
Hmm.
coping. And I do think that all the positive energy that everybody puts out in any disaster, not just what happened here, anytime, it is helpful in some way at some point in time.
I mean, because I know that just happened. So thank you for being forthright and truthful and talking about what happened and all the things behind the scenes and things like that.
I think I can almost breathe. You know, today we've got really high winds again.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, please don't any other idiot walk outside, please. And there are fires all around us, but just not here. There's some over in Benson and down in Bisbee, and I mean, they're everywhere. But this is our windy time of year here.
Hmm.
And this year it heated up very quickly. We went from highs in the 50s to 90 in 3 days. We don't hit 90 here till middle of May, and yet we have
Hmm.
every day this week. So it's climate change plays into that. I know it does. There's a lot of moving parts,
Hmm.
but people everywhere, not just here, need to think. You need to think, before you go outside and do something that's going to wreck a whole lot of people's lives.
Hmm.
So,
So I know I can see that we have some viewers. So if anyone who's watching us has any questions, please put it in the comments section. We'll be happy to talk about it. Is there anything that you want to cover today on 4/22/22? I just want to say that often today.
I saw something the other day about when self care becomes creating an ego monster.
Hmm.
That's how that poster put it. And I think that's worth talking about because
Okay.
we do talk about self care a lot.
Hmm.
But sometimes if you become so self absorbed with what can I do for me now, and you start alienating people or you start thinking you deserve more than somebody else, that's when you start coming from your ego. And that is not self care. It may feel like it is in the moment, but that is not ultimately self care. So be mindful of that. I know a lot of people lately have been um, posting about doing things for yourself.
Hmm.
And spring is a time of regeneration, and self care comes along with that. Just make sure your self care doesn't take over your entire world.
Hmm.
I've seen people do that to themselves, and it's not pretty.
No, it's not pretty. It's funny because you're talking about self care. I'm usually pretty good about some things self care related, but when it comes to like my job, I usually never take a week off of work. I'll take a few days here and there, and so not next week, but the week after, I'm actually going to take a full week off of work and not think about anything related to that my job for an entire week.
You have needed that for so long, though. Yeah, I mean, seriously, you have needed that for a while. And that's the kind of self care we should be doing for ourselves.
It's
I
hard when you're the responsible one, like when
It
you're
is
brought up
really,
in a family where
yeah,
you're the responsible one or the go-to one or the one that everybody counts on all the time to be the steady, reliable one.
yep. It
Mhm.
gets old really fast, but you do need this trip, and I'm excited for you. I can't wait for you to go away out
Yeah,
there.
I can't wait to go away either. Um,
It's going to be really good for you. So
yeah,
uh,
it's
that's
really
a
exciting.
very good thing.
Yeah, so it's just been very, weird energy. And I'm also taking a class right now to really work on using my voice and putting my voice out there in the best way possible. And I found it really interesting because there's some chanting and mantras and things like that. I've taken a lot of classes in my time. This has to be the quietest class ever.
A class on chanting is quiet.
Well, I mean, you can't turn the mics on because it'll distort all the sound and stuff. But then at the end, the teacher's always like, well, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone ever want to share? And it's just crickets. And so I find myself wanting to rescue, and
Right.
it's like, "Well, I'll go first." And I'm like, "Nope, not gonna do that this time." And so it can be really hard sometimes, because I think if there could be discussion, people learn better that way. Like you take more in as you start to talk about it. The teacher's doing an amazing job. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm glad I took it. I don't know how, it's only week one. So we'll see how I feel after week one. But it's just really interesting to me and then half the people who signed up who were there for the introductory thing haven't come to the classes.
That's kind of strange.
They're probably watching them on the replays, but it's just really weird because you want that sense of community. You want that sense of belonging and feeling like we're all in this together. And I just feel like we're 8 people watching the teacher chant.
I would think, and I've taught a drumming class
Uh-huh.
online, and it's not like it's exactly like chanting, but it's still a sound. It's still a music vibration. I would think you would want to break in some breakout sessions where your students could bounce ideas off of each other. But that's
Yes, I'm not going to start giving the teacher suggestions. I'm all
no
right. I mean, that would be my inclination. I'm trying very hard not to do that this time.
good. Good. This is a really good class for you too. Um, I know it's probably going to be aggravating, and it already clearly is
No,
aggravating.
I'm not aggravated. I'm just always confused why people take classes and then don't participate.
Don't participate. Yeah, yeah, I don't get that one either. But I know I have taught some entry level Reiki classes and had that happen. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. But it's when you're at an entry level, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe these people really don't know what to expect or how to act. Usually by, you know, second degree Reiki, they're bouncing off the walls. Yeah, let's play with energy. But entry level, they probably don't know what it's all about.
I,
Interesting.
I'm not judging it. I just think it's really interesting. It's
It
not
is
at all what I expected. And, I haven't taken a class in a long time that's going to push me out of my comfort zone. So it's going to be really interesting. I have no idea why I'm sharing this today, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
You made me think of something. I sat down last night and I wrote a list of positives
Mhm.
to come from the fire. And but most people don't know. I have been thinking for the last almost 2 years now, do I really need to be here?
Mhm.
Should I just move somewhere else? Do I belong here? And I found out through this fire that people would miss me if I left. And that was the most eye opening thing. I'm like, whoa, really? It's like, you haven't spoken to me in almost 2 years, but wow. And
Mhm.
it was that sense of community and that sense of we are in this together. And neighbors do help each other out here, probably
Mhm.
because we're so far from civilization. We feel
Well,
like
and
we,
everyone ended up at your house.
yep.
There's
And
something to be said for that, that you're kind of the glue.
it's, this is the third time we've had a fire reasonably close to my little neighborhood.
Mhm.
And this is the closest one that's ever come here. Although there was one that was right across the street, but it's a very wide street. So, this one was technically closer than that one was. Um, and each time I find it so fascinating that people just come out of the woodwork to help. But
Mhm.
that's what I've noticed too. I was in New Orleans right after Hurricane Katrina, and that's what you saw there. As much as the media was saying, highlighting all the problems,
Mhm.
on the ground, people are basically good. And I think I needed that reminder because I've had it the last couple of years. And I needed that reminder that most people at their core are good people. And I think we forget that. There was something on social media. I don't watch news, so I have no idea what's going on. Um, but I saw a post, and I swear that divorce was finalized years ago. Was it not? That what's his name?
Oh, Johnny Depp and
Yeah,
Amber
yeah.
Heard.
I see posts on that, and I'm like, wasn't that like years and years ago? Wasn't that all?
Still going on.
I don't understand why it's
I
still
don't
going on.
either. I think they've been divorced for years. Now there's defamation lawsuits against each other.
That is an example of people not being good at their core. That was my point. You don't have to do that, and if you're going to do that, keep it private. The whole world doesn't need to know your business. But yeah, it's really interesting for me seeing comments
Mhm.
because I've been on both sides of that whole thing. My abusive husband, very, very abusive, put me in the hospital, put my infant daughter in the hospital. I couldn't get a restraining order against him. The police said there wasn't enough evidence. I'm in the hospital with my jaw wired shut because he broke my jaw. And I think she was 6 months old, daughter is in the hospital because he threw her up against a wall. But there wasn't enough evidence to get a restraining order.
There would be now. I mean, the
Well,
world has really changed since.
my recent, very, very ugly divorce, guess it's not so recent anymore, it's been a couple of years. His younger than my daughter and his son girlfriend um, went to a judge and said she was the other woman. And everyone knew who I was, so she was afraid of me. And she got a restraining order. I've never met this woman. Until I was served papers, I didn't even know what her name was.
Mhm.
So have we gone too far?
You know, and I think that's something that's a really good political debate. I think it's about being the truest form of yourself that you can be and living by the values that you believe to be important.
It just people can be so ugly to each other.
Well, hate has a way of turning things that way. Like if you have a lot of hate in your heart, the way that you see the world is going to shift.
Right.
I remember one of my mentors when I first was in the field um, used to talk about worldview. Do you see the world as a friendly place? Do you see the world as a place where something bad is always going to happen, that you're living on edge? And so however you view the world is going to be the world that you create,
Right. Right.
because we know that
Absolutely.
our thoughts create things. So if that is our thought process, then everyone we meet, that's what's going to happen, right? Everyone's going to be there to hurt us or do something. But if we start to see the world and can shift our perspective, then maybe some of the things that we create is different.
And that's what the fire taught me
Mhm.
is that there are still good people. And I live in exactly the place I'm supposed to be. So
So, viewers who are watching us, any comments or questions that you have, please type them into the comment section and we will answer them. Let us know that you're here. We can see that you're here, but anything that you want to talk about. Um, so, one of the comments was, I'm glad you're okay, Kelly. Yes, we're very glad that you're okay.
thank you very much.
And
Yeah,
thank you.
it was a little hairy there for a while.
And thank you to everyone who sent energy and kept the vision and things like that. Greatly appreciative to everybody. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
yeah. So, in the private Facebook group that I have, which is where we stream this when we do it live, I had talked to Kelly and I said, can I put this up there so that we can all hold a similar intention for, the best outcome possible? So, Kelly was said, "Yep, go for it." So we canceled the podcast on Wednesday. We put that up and we called on all the prayer warriors and healers to kind of be free to do their thing, just holding a similar intention.
One thing that's really interesting, um, I don't even know why I'm going to tell this story. Uh,
We
because
seem
they
to go
want me
down
to,
that. We seem to go down those paths a lot.
because they want me to talk about it. In the smoke,
Mhm.
and we were, a bunch of us were outside and watching the smoke, and in the smoke looked like a Native American face with a headdress and everything. And one of the guys that was here said, "That's Cochise. I recognize him. That's Cochise." And
I have chills.
yeah, and he's gonna take care of us. He's gonna make it. He's gonna. We called Cochise in, and he's freaking out about how, all the energies we were calling in the ancestors. And I'm like, welcome to my world. I talk to him all the time. But so many people seeing him in the clouds, so many people around here have told me from time to time they drive past my gate and there's a Native American chief there, and they see him and they look and he's gone. And that's who it is. I didn't actually know that's who it was.
Mhm.
I didn't really know that's who it was until we saw him in the clouds,
Mhm.
and or not clouds of smoke, but it was obvious. There was no mistaking it. The firefighters were like, "Whoa, who did what over here?" They call where I live, they call us Hippie Hill because we're a little different. And they were saying, well, only here would Native American chiefs appear in the smoke. And it just, that kind of stuff happens around here all the time. But it was so cool that I wasn't the only one that saw it. It's like I'm not insane, or maybe we all are, one or the other.
Do you want to share some of the comments that they made to you, like Wednesday night?
Well, some when the wind shifted and the sheriff came back, he said, me and a friend of mine, we do a lot of drumming and chanting out here all the time. We celebrate new moons, full moons, whatever. And he came out and he goes, I don't know what you two did, but I know you did something. And I said, huh? What do you mean? But he says, good job. It's just, and I think it's just the way the world is right now.
Mm.
So many people have had so many different kinds of experiences that they're more open to seeing things. And I really think that's why the people that were gathered at my place were, all of us saw that smoke. Um, but it is interesting. And
Mhm.
everybody said it came from that place. I know that place. That place is where it came from. And it just, one of the sheriffs said, I have a it was like a protective dome, but that's not what he said. He said that there was something around my property because the fire has gotten coming from the north, it got about a quarter of a mile,
Mhm.
but on the other side of the creek. So didn't get past the creek. And then it's come from the west and it got a quarter or three-quarters of a mile. And from the east, it's gotten across the road, which was really about a quarter of a mile, I guess. Um, and it doesn't get here. And they were saying, well, why do you think that is? Because I've gone through that before and I've done that storyline and I know how that movie ends and I would not recommend it.
So how did you answer it?
I just told him I can't, there are things that we cannot explain.
Mm.
And he said, well, you could explain them. You just don't want to talk to me about it. I'm like, that's the last thing in the world I need. But it's interesting how, we're talking before about miracles, how miracles do happen. And I've seen it in different places that I've lived.
Hmm.
And I've seen it when it had nothing really to do with me,
Hmm.
like Hurricane Katrina or, Hurricane Allen came in through Corpus Christi in 1980. And it was just, you see how, no matter how bad things are, you see how if things had gone to slightly different, it would have had an entirely different outcome. And I think that gives me hope,
Hmm.
and I think people should spend more of their time being grateful for what things are and not necessarily for what's gone bad. Every time I tell someone, well, you should be grateful for that, they will say something, well, that's easy for you to say. I've got this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. And it's just, that's not being grateful. You're being grateful for your problems, is what that ends up being. So, yeah.
It's always interesting. So, viewers, if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover today, please put them in the comments section. We will be happy to cover them. I had to talk to one of the owners today of the company that I work with. And I haven't talked to him in a while for various reasons because I work from home, so I never see him anymore. But it was really interesting because we got into this whole conversation about things, and he made a couple comments to me, and I'm just like, yeah, a year ago you would have never admitted. So he says to me, you're always going to be honest no matter what. I can trust you that you're going to tell me what's going on in the company, whether I want to know or not. And I'm like, yep, I am.
Well,
So, it was nice to kind of get that kind of, and not that I needed the recognition, but, because I'm so different from so many of the other people that work there that they've never quite known what to do with me
yeah,
there. So it seems like it's all starting to come full circle.
that's
I
good
could be
because
wrong, but that's what it felt like today.
no, and as much as you say you didn't need the recognition, everybody needs recognition. And they have used and abused you for a long time. So it's time for them to recognize you. Um, but I am not sure what it is you are supposed to be learning from all of this stuff that you endure at your job, but there's something there.
I used to think that it was lessons for me. I think it's lessons I'm supposed to teach
Teach.
them. Uh,
Yep.
some of it is still things that I need to learn, and I can own my part in all of it. And some of it is about teaching a different way to go about things.
Sometimes that really sucks. I've been in those situations before too, where my part in it was not necessarily, it wasn't a lesson for me, it was a lesson for me to teach. And that really sucks sometimes. It
Yeah,
just
it does.
does. So,
Because every time I say, I think I'm getting, and he's like, "You're not leaving, are you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not leaving." Um, it's just always interesting, you know. And sometimes it's important to get those reminders, or it's important to hear those words. Do I need them often? No, but once in a while, it's just nice to know that your presence makes some kind of difference.
it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, somebody asked me when we were watching the fire why it was that I did paranormal investigations.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my answer because it makes me feel like I'm helping. And the people that we do go out and help are appreciative. And you can see they look so much lighter than they were when we got there. And I think that's a good reason to do anything.
Mhm. And I think it's just about finding your place in the world and shining your light. And it's going to be different for every single person on the planet.
Hmm.
So it's always interesting to me. Everything lately is very interesting to me. Just being on the planet is interesting in and of itself. And then, just getting some inklings of the direction that we're going to go as a consciousness and things like that. That's interesting.
I think a lot of people are in need of some help sorting things out.
Hmm.
As more and more people wake up, you're going to have more and more people who are like, what is going on? And I really think that's where you and I can come in and help a lot of people. So we
Yeah,
should.
I was trying to see who the comments were coming from. Yes, everything is definitely interesting these
Yeah.
days. And I think it's just about keeping your own head screwed on straight because it's so easy. And I was just talking to one of my coworkers about this. Since I work from home, it is so easy for me to not be able to separate work from the rest of my life because, like,
Mhm.
I'll see my work phone flashing. I'm like, "Oh, I'm home. I'm not doing anything." I'll see what the message is or,
Yep.
something like that. So when I noticed that I was getting like really sucked back into all that, I made a very conscious effort of how am I going to separate this out? How am I going to like put all the work stuff away so that I don't even see it? And I was talking this about like when I come back from vacation because I'm not going away for the whole time. It's like I don't want to see my work stuff when I come home. I want it to be all packed away. So like that's not the first thing I see when I get back. Going, oh, I wonder what's going on, or I wonder what, they're gonna be just fine, and I think sometimes we have a hard time letting go, especially if you grew up with trauma and stuff, it's like you try and fix everything, and so,
Yep.
you know what? They're gonna survive just fine for a week without me. Maybe they'll even be better, who knows?
Maybe they'll be better to you when you come back.
We'll see about that one, but, it's really about learning to stand in your own power and be who you're meant to be.
Yeah. And that's maybe the hardest thing for a lot of people to
You
figure out.
were forced to do that Wednesday. You were forced to like let everyone see who you really are and kind of what you actually have been doing on this land for the last 20 years that it was protected.
Most people around here, and this is what scared me. And it wasn't really scared, but I was concerned. Most people around here knew my ex because he was Mr. I have to go and visit each person every couple days. And it would drive me insane. I finally, after the first year or so, went, you know what? You go on with your bad self. I'm going to stay here with the dog. And so with him being gone, um, I was kind of, I wonder how people will react to just me being here.
Mm.
And Wednesday, I had half a dozen people saying, please stay here. Please don't go anywhere. We heard a rumor you might be moving. Don't do that. And it was like, wow. And then so many people were telling me how annoying he had been showing up at their house every week or two. So it just sometimes the worst situations really do show us the best in who other people are and who we are.
What some of the famous sayings are what, like triumph of the human spirit? And that was the one they wanted me to definitely say. But sometimes when we're in our darkest times is when we find out how much we really matter and how much people really care about us. It would be so amazing if that wasn't the case, where people just said all those things anyway.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of times people have a hard time giving people messages like that. It
Yeah.
doesn't take anything away from you to tell someone else they're amazing.
Right. Right. One of the funniest things on Wednesday was when people started showing up with animals. Every
Okay, Noah's Ark.
every single dog knows me, knows my animals. No, there was not a strange dog because all the dogs around here, we're out in the middle of nowhere. You know, they run and they play. It's like we have a gigantic dog park here.
Mhm.
And hey, there's Skipper. Oh, look, there's Trudy. Oh, and the owners were like, how do you know my dog? So that was kind of funny. And don't ever get a llama. They spit and they're accurate. That's the other thing.
Now everybody's animals have been returned to their homes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to rebuild fences, and pens.
Mhm.
A lot of stuff is still under construction, but all in all, we're very grateful for the way everything has gone.
Anything else you want to say today before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your energy and your prayers, because I know it helped.
And we'll be back to our hopefully normal day next week, which is Wednesdays.
Whatever passes for normal these days, I don't know.
Normal, it's a setting on the washing machine.
Yes.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend, and we will see you guys all back next week. Take care.
Bye.